Hi, thank you, Meg. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for taking the time out of your day to join us. My name is Annalie Perez, and I'm a program manager at ServiceNow, supporting our Now on Now program within the IT organization. Before we get to meet our amazing panelists, I'd like to share what ServiceNow is all about for those who have never heard of us before. So ServiceNow was founded in 2004 by Fred Luddy to essentially help employees and organizations seamlessly work through what we call digital workflows. So let's take a moment and really think about our daily tasks as workflows, from employee onboarding during COVID, scheduling doctor's appointment via an online portal, or even ordering coffee from Starbucks through your mobile app. These processes are all built on workflows, which then spur innovation, making the world, what we like to say, making the world work better for everyone. These are just a few examples of how ServiceNow supports about 80% of Fortune 500 companies, such as Starbucks, Delta Airlines, NBA, WNBA, just to name a few. Now let's get into the main discussion. We're excited to explore Ni de Aquí, Ni de Allá, not from here, not from there. The intersectionality of Latino cultures, and what does it mean to navigate having one foot in two separate worlds? Our panel will discuss these topics, such as navigating when your authenticity is called into question, leveraging your culture to help you advance professionally, colorism, and how to embrace being from both worlds. Now, the exciting part, let's have our panelists introduce themselves. Jennifer, if it's all right, I'd love to start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Hola todos. I'm Jennifer Boysick, and I'm a director of DEI here at ServiceNow. I have about 16 years of a career in tech, from sales engineering, management, leadership, to this past year transition to DEI. It was a complete pivot in my career. And happy to be here on this panel. Now, a little bit about me. So I was born in Sacramento, California, born and raised as a Cali girl. My mother, single parent, raised me, immigrated from Lima, Peru back in the 80s. And so I'm a proud Peruana Americana. And I love my heritage. I grew up going back to Peru and seeing my family, who is all there. All my cousins, tias, tios, goddaughters are all over in Lima, Peru. And so I absolutely love being Latina, being part of this culture, especially Peruvian food. For all of you out there who have eaten Peruvian food, know how amazing it is. So anyways, that's a bit about me. Thank you.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Jeffrey Vique. I'm a customer success manager at ServiceNow. Born and raised in the Washington, D.C. area. And my parents are actually from Colombia. They immigrated here in the 80s, and then had me and my siblings. So it was my first introduction into the tech industry, working at ServiceNow. It's been absolutely phenomenal. Enjoy it, enjoy the culture, because it's very accepting of my culture, right? So I grew up going back and forth between here in the States and family all over the States to Colombia as a kid. So I was exposed to my my Latino and Colombian culture. My parents are from Cali, so I'm a Cali pachanguero. I love the salsa music, and Grupo Nietzsche, you know, so I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeffrey. Daniela.
Hi. I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me okay?
All good.
Awesome. Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. I'm Daniela Narimatsu. I'm a solution consultant here at ServiceNow. I'm currently based in New York, but I'm from São Paulo, Brazil. Came to the US about 9 or so years ago for college and have been able to stay ever since. My husband is from Ecuador, and we've kind of been sharing this experience together, being immigrants, first generation, leaving our countries, understanding how to stay reconnected to our roots back home, but also where we fit in a new country, a new culture, him joining the Brazilian culture and me joining more of the Latino culture. So I'm very excited to be here today talking to everyone and listening to my peers' experience as well.
Awesome. Thanks all of you for sharing your backgrounds and experiences. Now let's get into the discussion. Daniela, let's start with you. Given our theme, not from here, not from there, let's talk about where we sit in the Latino culture.
Yeah, I think I probably spoiled a little bit of that with my introduction, but I think that has been a big part of my journey ever since I came to the US. Being Brazilian is a very unique experience because we don't grow up speaking Spanish, we don't understand Spanish. And when we come to the US, we're put in the same bucket as the other Latino countries, which is an extremely rich culture, but it's in a lot of ways, it feels very different from ours. So that has been a big process of understanding my Brazilianity, so to say, and being true to Portuguese and bringing my Latino friends closer to that heritage for me, but also being open to understanding how these other countries are connected to each other, how Spanish, learning how to appreciate reggaeton, salsa, all these rhythms that not necessarily are things I grew up with, but have been so important in my journey as an immigrant, and is the closest I get to feel from home when I get to go to a Colombian restaurant and they have frijoles and it just tastes so similar to ours, and finding, you know, those links between what makes us all share the same culture and have all these points in common: food, music, sense of humor, being able to crack jokes with your friends that my American friends will not even think that was funny. So that has been a really fun journey. And I think personally, apart from going through these processes that I'm sure is very common for a lot of immigrants, especially Brazilians, I've been very lucky at ServiceNow to work with LATAM. And that's not something I've had the chance with any of my previous roles. And being able to work with any country from Mexico and under, speaking professional Spanish, professional Portuguese has been such a new experience for me because I left so young, and learning how to reappreciate my culture and other Latino cultures through the lens of my job and through the plurality of the economies, the industries, the people I get to work with has been such a rich experience. And I'm very grateful I'm having this chance here at ServiceNow.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing all of that. Jennifer and Jeffrey, anything you'd like to add? Good. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Daniela, for those insights. Let's go a little deeper here. Jeffrey, what is it like to have one foot in both worlds?
Yeah, no, great question. So as I mentioned, you know, I was born and raised in this area, in the U.S. and in America, and having parents and being able to go back to Colombia, that, you know, having parents that are from Colombia and being able to fly back and forth, you know, for the holiday season, which I absolutely loved, was a great experience. So having one foot in, one foot out was awesome because I got a chance to really explore two different worlds. However, peeling back an onion of layer there, is the fact that when I would go and visit Colombia, my cousins or neighborhood kids around the area would always say, "Oh, here comes Jeff, the gringo," right? So, and then going to school and growing up here, because I didn't look like the kids that I went to school with, I didn't feel like I belonged here either. So it was a balancing act, you know, spiritually, mentally, and physically, trying to differentiate and decide, where do I belong on the American side, on the Colombian side, where it didn't feel like I truly belonged. So it was quite the experience. But now, being a part of, for example, Unidos at ServiceNow, which is our employee belonging group, it's kind of opened up that door to be able to say that I'm from both and I can be from both and embrace both and accept both, and then incorporate both into my everyday journey, which is absolutely has been absolutely empowering.
Absolutely. The importance of really modeling our full authenticity is so vital and so important. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
And
Jennifer,
yeah,
go ahead. Yeah. Did you
because
want to add on to that?
Yeah, I'd love to, because Jeffrey's story is so similar to mine. You know, as I mentioned in my intro, I grew up here in California, and I went to predominantly Catholic schools, which I didn't see a lot of people like myself. And it wasn't until really college that I learned more about being Latina and first generation, the first in my family to go to college and the first in my family to go into corporate, and having those kinds of similarities with others around me in that community and feeling like belonging. I didn't, you know, you don't know what you don't know until you're exposed to a situation, and in my case in college, being on the Latino floors and part of SHIP and different organizations that are predominantly for Latinos, is when I realized the power of our community. But like Jeffrey mentioned, I myself grew up when I was 5 was the first time that I went to Lima, Peru to visit my family. And I grew up speaking Spanish. And I guess my mom said that when I arrived in Lima, I was so quiet because it was the first time I was around everyone else that was speaking Spanish. And she said this by the second day, I was bossing around my cousin. So it was fine after like 24 hours. But it was just surreal to be in that kind of environment where it's so different. Obviously, everyone around you speaks a different language. And then growing up with Spanish, I felt it took me a little bit to you know, overcome that fear of the unknown. And then after I was 5, every year, practically my whole life, I've been going to Peru to visit my family. And that's why the Ni de Aquí Ni de Allá, to Jeffrey's point, when I go back to Peru, they call me the gringa too, because even though my Peruvian Spanish is good, they have that, I have that little accent, right? I have a little bit of an American accent. And so the Ni de Aquí de Allá is like, now I'm not Peruvian enough to be fully Peruvian with my Peruvian family, but then when I'm here in the US, people at work will ask me, well, what's your ethnicity? What's your background? And I say, I'm Peruvian, but I wasn't born in Peru. I'm American with a Peruvian heritage. And sometimes there's confusion. Actually, for years at work, people thought I was actually born in Peru because I love saying I'm Peruvian. So you know, this whole concept of Ni de Aquí ni de Allá is feeling like you aren't really fully fitting in both of these worlds. And what I've heard commonly is we can also flip that around and say that we're de aquí y de allá, that we actually have so much power and value in being from both worlds. And I actually didn't see that come to fruition until later in my career, when I was part of another company and was part of an ERG, the Latino ERG, and we brought a group from LATAM to work, and I had to do a demo in Spanish. And I was like, oh my gosh, all these words that I knew in English, how do I translate them into Spanish? But how powerful to be able to connect with a community in the workplace that you can resonate with, one, speak the language and understand culture. There's so much power for those of us that come from both worlds that we can apply that in our workplace. And to Jeffrey's point about Unidos, that's what we see as well. And Daniela's point as well, working with LATAM. So it's ni de aquí de allá, but also de aquí y de allá, and embracing both worlds that we're from.
I love that. Daniela, would you like to add a little bit on that?
Yeah, no, I love de aquí y de allá, because I think for a long time in my experience, you feel like you're a tourist. You go back home and they're listening to new songs, or they're using new slangs that you're not familiar with, but you come back here and they're referencing something from middle school, and you weren't here, or I wasn't here in middle school. So it was very hard to resonate with that at first, but now I'm more and more, as Jennifer said, I feel like I'm in both places. I can go back and maybe not know the latest of everything, but I can have that connection. I can understand the culture, and more I feel the same in the US, and has been such a powerful journey to feel more and more like I am in both places. I understand both cultures. I navigate these worlds that 5-6 years ago was so scary for me. And I never thought I would want to stay in the US, because it didn't feel like home for a really long time. And kind of seeing how that journey has been, and how work has been a huge pivot for that, for me, has been tremendous. EBG groups like Unidos or similar groups I've had in my past jobs has been extremely important for me to find my mentors, to find people that look like me or sound like me and will understand my jokes and are going to help my career go forward. So if anything, I feel very lucky that I get to be in a group like this where we've all had different journeys and different paths. We're all coming to the same realization that we belong here. And we also belong in Peru, in Colombia, in Brazil. So it's very exciting to see how far we've all come.
Thank you. I think everyone can really relate to kind of being the only in the rooms and sometimes not feeling like we're enough. But it's good to really break down the barriers, break down those doors, and pave the way for others coming after us. So that way they won't continue to feel like they're the only in the room. So I want to stay on this topic. And let's explore how colorism continues to play a role in the diversity of Latinidad. I'd like to start with Jeffrey and then hear from Daniela and Jennifer.
Yeah, absolutely. So so peeling back another layer, right, of neither belonging here nor there, ni de aquí ni de allá. I think it's very important to understand the topic of colorism. So colorism, for the folks that are not necessarily familiar with the term, it's having or feeling a sense of discrimination based on the color of your skin, even though you might be part of that particular ethnicity or ethnic group. So, for example, as you can see, I'm a little bit of darker complexion, and so there are times where even within the Latino community, I don't feel like I necessarily belong because I may not be Eurocentric looking like some of my other colleagues, and so even in situations like that, you have that colorism aspect where you also have to think about. And so for me, navigating that, like Daniela mentioned earlier, is we all belong, no matter what shade of color we are, no matter where we're from, no matter how we were raised or where we were raised. And so that colorism aspect just adds a little bit more spice to me and my experiences and what I can bring to the table. And as long as you accept that, I think you're doing the whole world a disservice, because, or a service, I should say, because they get to know who you are and what you're about.
So, Jennifer?
Sure. So I add to Jeffrey's point, and I think for me, personally, I have nieces. My cousin married a African Peruvian. Her husband is Afro-Peruvian, and people don't even realize that in Peru we have so much diversity, not just Eurocentric, but we have so much history, especially on the Asian side. At one point, we had a president who was Japanese, and me personally, I get confused for Asian more so than being Latina, and so I have to explain kind of the heritage and my ancestry, and help people understand that we're not a monolith as Latinos, and we have a wide range of diversity within our Latino community, within all the countries that are represented as part of Latin America. And so I think it just goes back to helping to educate and helping people to understand what our diversity looks like in our own community. And then, I don't know if you want to add anything from a Brazil standpoint.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit. I think all of our countries are so diverse, and unfortunately, that's not necessarily how it's always represented. I think in the topic of colorism and the diversity within each one of our countries, Brazil it's very similar to the US in the sense that you will find someone from every country or every heritage there. I'm half Japanese and half Spanish. And very interestingly, our generation is sort of the first generation of people who are more mixed, because these immigrant communities tended to be very close for the past 2 or 3 generations, Brazilian generations. So I'm the first generation mixed, my cousins and I. And in Brazil, people very quickly recognize my Japanese heritage. And my family comes from southern Japan, Okinawa, where people are a little bit darker, don't have necessarily the Japanese taste would think about. So in Brazil, that's never been a problem. I think I've had the privilege of having the Asian heritage in Brazil growing up. And that's another problem of its own, the quote unquote model minority. But coming to the US, that's not what people see in me. They see I'm Latina. I always get Latino, or I'll get Filipino or Hawaiian, but they'll also see that my skin is a little bit darker. And it was a shocking experience to start to realize that leaving your country is also leaving the privileges you had in your country, and kind of having to justify everything about you when you go somewhere new. And this isn't to say those privileges I have back home still don't exist here, but it's a new experience to start to understand that when people look at me, they're not looking at the things that other Brazilians will see at me. And I have to justify why I look like this, and why my family immigrated to Brazil, and why my last name is Japanese. And as much as in the beginning, it was a very frustrating experience to feel like I wasn't understood or I wasn't seen in the way I see myself, it was also a good experience, I guess, for myself, because it kind of helped me embrace more who I am and the journey my family went through to get to Brazil, my great-grandparents, and kind of resonate with the experience of going somewhere new, learning something new about yourself in that journey is all in all very overwhelming. But I wouldn't change the experience I had for anything. But if anything, if there's anything I say in this panel that gets taken away, is there's so much plurality, oh my God, in every country. And I think being open to when we meet folks from the community and understanding that we all had different paths getting here, our families had different paths, it's always good to keep in mind and be open to people's journeys when we meet them, and not make any judgment, not jump to conclusions that they don't look how they should look or what you expect someone from Brazil to look. It's always good for us to keep in mind, especially as allies of each other in the Latino community.
Well, that's so important, is to be allies even within your own community. Thank you for calling that out. This is such a very impactful topic, and just the overall impact it has on Latino culture from a personal and professional perspective. But before our final question, I want to remind those out in the audience that will open up Q&A. So please submit your questions. The panel is here to really provide insights on whatever your questions are. This is our close to final question, but we've discussed a lot of different topics today. But I think one of the main themes that we saw was imposter syndrome. Would each of you share advice on its impact on your actual versus assumed heritage, and what is the best way to navigate imposter syndrome? Daniela, would you like to start this one?
Sure. I think imposter syndrome is an interesting topic for me because that wasn't something I experienced in my career. And that's not to say because I wasn't the only in the room, because I almost always was. But I was very lucky to start my career with a really strong EBG group at my first job at Deloitte in Chicago, where people in my team were part of that group sometimes, or we met weekly with that group to talk about our careers. And we had Latino partners from other cities in the US that would support us. So I think very early, I was extremely lucky to find examples and to find folks that were first generation American or that were immigrants like me, that were going through the visa process. So I think I got to put some of the anxieties from imposter syndrome into other areas of my immigrant experience. But I think the strongest thing, and really what I hope I can do throughout my career, is be that same person that my mentors were for me in my first job, because that gave me so much confidence and they really reaffirmed me every time, even when I can't say plurality, they would say like, it's okay, don't worry, we can speak English either, and move on. So that has always stayed with me, and I've been extremely lucky in every job to find that type of group. Here we need those. I have you guys, and you're all incredible examples too. So I would say, in my experience, having that very early in my career has really shifted the way I experienced imposter syndrome. And obviously also trying to always find jobs in places that I feel accepted and not feel like actually I should say that differently. Not that I am accepted, but that I belong and that I can be myself without having to be more American or sound more American. So maybe consciously or unconsciously, because I had that experience in my first job, I've always also steered towards places that very clearly accepted me from the very beginning.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that. Jeffrey?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I have had faced imposter syndrome, and occasionally it pops its head up from time to time, especially recently. As I mentioned, this is I started with ServiceNow a year and a half ago. Where if I didn't mention it, I started with them in March, and this is my first introduction into this type of industry. So I've got the imposter syndrome there, where okay, am I supposed to be where I'm supposed to be? And then on top of the colorism aspect, right? No one around me looks like me. Leadership doesn't look like me, and that's been the case since I've started my professional journey. But what I've learned through a lot of the efforts of D&I, especially at ServiceNow, being involved in these EBG groups, is that you have an arm that you can lean on, a group of people that can inspire you, whether that's the members themselves or the leadership team or that you work with, like this panel, the guests on this panel have inspired me to really look back and say, you know what, I do belong. I am supposed to be here, and there is a reason why I'm here. It isn't just because I'm here to just earn a paycheck. It's because I truly want to make a difference and truly want to excel. And there's a saying, push forward and pull up, and that's the saying that I've been really living and breathing these last couple months, and it's all thanks to a company that has a great culture like this one, for sure. That's has then since inspired me to do a lot of other things. And if you're curious to know, feel free to jump on my LinkedIn to know what kind of other efforts I'm involved in. But it's just opened up this door of, you know what, damn right I belong, damn right I'm supposed to be here, and I'm here. So what?
Love it, Jeffrey. You belong.
Yes.
And we're happy you're here.
Mhm.
Exactly. And I want to build off of Jeffrey, because you guys are always so energizing. And so I want to add on to it and share that for me, imposter syndrome comes up when it's navigating the unknown, being put in my case, completely doing a career pivot a little less than a year and a half ago. This is like my second time I pivoted in my career, and it's jumping into the unknown, right? And being the only in the room. Early on in my career, I did sales engineering, and I was the only Latina in an entire organization, the only woman, and then the only Latina. At one point, I was on a team of 11 managers, global managers, and I was the only female manager for sales engineers. And so I bring that up because it's hard to be the only, but the way I've looked at it is there's so much I'm contributing by being the only, because there's no one else that can have or share the experience that I'm bringing to the table, whether it's culturally being from both worlds or language, all of these things and value that we bring as Latinos, first generation or Latino Americans. Like there's so much power in what we have to contribute and having a voice at the table, even by being the only. And I think imposter syndrome and having that background allows us to cope better with imposter syndrome, because I go back to when I was 5 and I was not speaking Spanish for a full day with my family because I probably felt imposter syndrome when I was going to Peru. And so, I think that those experiences help us to cope and just understand how to apply that in the workplace. And I'll give an example to what everyone mentioned, and having ERGs is such a great way to unite and collaborate with others that do look like you, because it helps to cope, another way to cope. And actually at ServiceNow, about 3.5, I joined almost 4 years ago, and about 6 months into my journey at ServiceNow, we didn't have employee belonging groups. I came to the company not knowing anyone. I was recruited actually via LinkedIn, and I love the mission of the company, came over from a 12-year career at Cisco. And I was the first one to raise my hand to say, we need to have a Latinx ERG. And that's why this company, ServiceNow, had created a bunch of ERGs to help foster this environment of inclusion and belonging. And since then, in such a short amount of time, we've had discussions around imposter syndrome as a community. How do we come together to help each other on our own career journeys? And I'm just so proud with both you, Daniela, three of you actually, who are part of the leadership team right now for Unidos, and fostering these conversations, because it helps so much, to your point, Jeff, pull up and push forward and pull up, right? The next generation to have these kinds of discussions and help all of us.
Absolutely. Jennifer, thank you for paving the way for all of us. Me specifically, for being a constant inspiration, and just for always being there for all of us. So we appreciate you.
Thank you. That's good.
There's another saying I like to say just before you move on, Annalise. So there's a saying I heard a couple of weeks back. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu, and Jennifer has created the table for us to be able to dictate what's on the menu. So thank you.
Thank you. You guys are great.
Well, thank you, all of you, for being vulnerable with us and sharing your stories. I want to use this time to open up to our audience and see what questions they have. We do have one specifically for Jennifer. What types of challenges do DE&I teams face when it comes to hiring for diversity?
Okay. Yeah, so there's plenty of challenges with that. I mean, obviously, especially in tech, when we look at the Latino population, it's a little bit over 3% representation. And so there's definitely an objective across DEI, but more importantly, talent acquisition, and working in parallel with talent acquisition to make sure the right standards are embedded and the right representation goals are embedded into the overall plan for recruiting. I think what's most important too is bringing awareness and awareness of what companies, in this case ServiceNow, bringing awareness to our Latino community that this is a great place to work for people like us that are already here. And one of the objectives we have through that in DEI and through our EBGs or our ERGs is to make sure we're providing these stories and like sharing out who we are, being Latinos, Latinas in the company, what's our our experience, to motivate excuse me, and encourage others that look like us that are part of our community to pursue careers within our own companies. So that branding and awareness piece is extremely important to us, but also making sure it's like that's one side of the story. The other side is educating hiring managers to think of inclusivity in the way that they source talent, in the way that they interview, making sure that there's diverse panels of interviewers to be able to advocate for diverse talent in those hiring pools. So there's a lot of facets that go into some of the challenges that we see, but I think we all need to do a better job of sharing our own stories with our community to motivate them and find opportunities in tech, especially with the next generation. Because in California alone, 1 out of every 2 K through 12 students is Latino. So this is the future pipeline of talent for tech and every other industry, let alone the statistics that we have across the US. And so it's vital that we, for those of us that are in the industry, to pave the way for those that are coming in.
Absolutely. Thank you. Another question, this is for everyone here. What advice can you share with the folks who don't feel like they belong within the tech space because they are the only in the room?
I think I can kind of chime in on that one there. So I mentioned pushing forward and pulling up. I think the advice is, I think it ties back into that imposter syndrome piece. You are where you're supposed to be. There's a reason you're there. You know, it's not because of chance. I think as long as you accept that, and then you start embracing the fact that even though you're the only one, you can contribute your own culture into the conversation, which then starts paving the way and opening the door for a lot of other people. And Jennifer mentioned the youth, right? You know, by way of mentorship and that kind of thing, leaders then start, or I'd say youth or early in career folks or people that have transitioned to a new industry or vertical or whatever it is, sees that, you know, even though there's only one person that looks like them up there, that's all it takes. And so I think as long as you keep that in the back of your head, even if you're the only person in the room, you're setting the example and you're setting the tone for the future, and continuing it on, and then paying it forward, right? You know, helping folks that might need the help to be able to fill in these other spots, for more people to be able to look like you at the table.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to add?
I'll add something as well. I think apart from everything Jeffrey said, or in addition to what everything Jeffrey said, is sort of take that leap of faith on yourself. We are all extremely hard workers. We know how many times we had to work extra hard to get something maybe some of our peers didn't have to. And that builds so much of your strength and your character and your determination, your ambition. So definitely don't sell yourself short. I would say it's hard. It never gets easier, but more and more you're going to get to see that you are qualified for that role. Or if you email that person to have a quick coffee chat, they probably will say yes, because they're also interested in your experience as much as you are interested in theirs. When I applied to the leadership role for Unidos, that was because I randomly met one of our co-leaders, Julio, in an Unidos event. And we talked a little bit about EBGs. I wasn't involved yet. And he told me, you should apply. And I remember when we stopped talking, I was like, no, I mean, I shouldn't. Like, there's so many great people here. There's so many amazing Latinos at this organization. Why? And then took that leap of faith, and I'm here today, and I'm getting to have these experiences with my peers and other amazing folks, that if I hadn't taken that decision almost a year ago, I wouldn't be here. And obviously Julio was a huge part of it. He was the person that saw me and encouraged me. So also, as much as stress yourself, also listen to folks around you that are giving you that courage and are pushing you forward, because there are a lot of people that believe in you. Those are my comments.
Great. Thank you. We do have another question, and I think this is pointed to you, Jennifer. What metrics and KPIs should organizations use to measure the effectiveness of their initiatives in supporting Latinx immigrant talent?
Right. Well, from a DEI perspective, there's a bunch of metrics, and I want to separate like DEI and then also EBG. I know Jeffrey and then maybe you guys can talk about Unidos metrics as well. But what we look at for sure is how effective these programs are with creating community. And we measure that by whether it's surveys done after certain events. For example, we had our Unidos Heritage Month and had John Leguizamo as part of that to share, and he did an incredible job sharing history of Latinos globally. And I think it's partly seeing that we're not just creating community within the existing Latino community, but how are we also bringing in allyship? and making sure that we're educating those even outside of our community. Then on a DEI perspective, it's also looking at attrition, making sure that Latino employees that are here, especially early in career, are staying, and that they're seeing longevity in their career within the company, that they're seeing people like them, execs like them, all the way to the top that look like them, and they see a path for themselves to have longevity in their career. And then promotions as well, like making sure that we're having programs and partnerships with the right external organizations to bring in the right content to provide professional development for Latinos as they embark on their own career journeys. And I could speak personally as having been part of a pilot program with an organization called Strive, having the direct career coaching, having the community to be able to talk through some of the challenges with my own career development helped me to get to where I am today. And so effectively measuring these programs to make sure we're seeing growth of Latinos in their careers within the company is extremely important in ways of measuring it. Anything that you want to add on the Unidos front and how you're measuring success?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, from a EBG standpoint, the metrics are how involved and engaged are each one of our members are, whether that's the events that we have. We do an annual survey at the beginning of the year where we send out and we receive feedback as to what do people want out of this EBG. I know we have the Cinco de Mayo celebrations, we have the Hispanic Heritage Month events, and like Jennifer mentioned, John Leguizamo. But there's a little bit more added pieces to that for the members where we need to focus and ensure that they're taken care of as our members. And what we've noticed, and for example, in the survey that we conducted earlier this year, is I want to be able to grow. I want the talent development piece. I want to be able to move up within the corporate ladder. And so as an EBG group, I think it's our responsibility to be able to meet the needs of our members in doing just that, creating programs and creating events or learning opportunities like the Strive Leadership Program for our members to be able to equip themselves so that they don't receive the no when it comes to applying for a new role or a leadership position or what have you.
Great. Thanks, Jeffrey. We have another question from the audience. There's people out there who just have a hard time finding mentorship and guidance as Latino immigrants. How should they reach out and find mentors, especially at the early stage of their career? And how can they offer the relationship to be mutually beneficial? And they would also just love to know how each of you found your mentors.
Yeah, I can speak on that if you guys don't mind. So for me, my culture has helped me be able to be uncomfortable and step out of my comfort zone. So one of the things I always pay tribute to whenever I talk about my culture is my mother. A Colombian mother is one that makes sure you're not only well fed but also told when you need to do things, right? And so that's helped me develop out of my comfort zone very frequently. So honestly, to answer that question, just like the Nike logo says, just do it. Go out and find someone that you feel has similar upbringing, similar a career path that you want to jump towards, and reach out to them. A good tool is LinkedIn. A good if you're at an organization and you see a Latino leader at VP status or executive status or whatever it is, reach out to them. The worst you can get is no or crickets, but the chances of you actually being able to get a hold of somebody at that level are actually higher than you think. And so for me, that's exactly what I did, especially at ServiceNow. For example, our executive sponsor at the Unidos group, Tony Colon, a Puerto Riqueño from south side of Chicago, I reached out to him and said, look, hey, like some time on your calendar, even if it's 15 minutes, I'd love to chat. Conversations evolved, and now he's a sponsor. So for you to be able to to tap into your culture and your Latinidad, just go out and do it. I know it's easier said than done, but I think you muster up that courage to do it, and it'll then demonstrate to that particular mentor that that's what they can offer. Hey, look, they can offer me as a mentor, the ability to just do it. So hopefully that inspires someone to go out there and just reach out to a mentor in that sense.
Yeah, and I'll add that when we created our Unidos ERG early on, like 3.5 years ago, there was someone on our leadership team, Victor, he was in charge of professional development. He saw that there was a need for creating mentorship for specifically early in career Latinos that coming into the company that don't have a lot of guidance or people that they can easily connect to. So he created a mentorship program within our belonging group. And so my advice is wherever you work, whoever asks the question, try to find, if you don't have an EBG group or ERG group, maybe you start creating one, or maybe you start finding ways that you can provide your own mentorship program, because I'm sure you're not the only one who feels that way. And it's an opportunity for you to get visibility, and by creating impact within your company. And then naturally you will have sponsors, mentors coming to you because they'll see your the impact that you're making. And then I'll also challenge a little bit of what Jeffrey said, because I do feel like when you grow further up in your career, there are less and less Latino executives to be able to pull from and be mentors. And so don't be hesitant to reach out to people that don't have a similar journey, because reverse mentoring is also really important. Even if you're early in career, you have so much to contribute as a Gen Z, right? To like share your experience with an executive who may have a very different perspective. So I would say, it's great if you find a mentor that has a similar experience and culturally you can align with. But I've also personally had amazing mentors that are not Latinos, and they have provided a completely different perspective, and I provided them with a different perspective. And I think that's where the value add is. So be open, and to the point made, like just go out and talk to people, because you'll be surprised that plenty of people want to help and learn how to help. And obviously getting something in return with that kind of relationship you're building is important, and people don't usually say no. So try it out.
Yeah, I second everything you guys said. I think that was very similar to how my journey was too. When we, as an immigrant, I think we lack some of the social capital that Americans might have. Like, oh, that person, then knows that person, then knows me. So your circle is so much smaller. I couldn't, I didn't know where to start when I was sort of coming up on graduation for my college and starting to think about where to go for work. And you already have very limited work options because of visas. But that is one thing that brings every immigrant together. It's the pain of going through visa process. So I've had, to Jennifer's point, I had mentors in my first job that weren't Latinos, but we would just set up calls where half of our time would be venting about the H-1B process and the green card process. And it was a really organic way for us to connect. And apart from work, I do want to say LinkedIn is a great resource. Look for industries that you're interested in, look for a location, filter for where you are, filter for interests that you might have in common, like volunteering or anything else. We are so plural, as we've said in one of the questions, right? There's so much to us. There's so many layers. So you'll be able to find people that connect with you in all of those different layers. It's just about keep trying to find the person. Mentorships are also organic. You can't just find someone, ask them to be a mentor, and they'll be your mentor forever. It is something that you have to nurture. You're going to know when you meet someone and if they are the type of person that are even willing to be a mentor. But you really, to Jeffrey's point, you really just have to get out there and try and talk to folks, and you will know when you find the folks that are willing to be invested in your career and will be in your corner for you.
Absolutely. Thank you, all of you, Jennifer, Jeffrey, Daniela, for your time this afternoon. And thank you for everyone who joined. Please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to connect with everyone here on LinkedIn. They'd be happy to support and answer any other questions. Also, I want to note that tomorrow we have a virtual job fair from 12 to 1 p.m. PST, 3 to 4 p.m. EST. So please stop by, ask your questions. Selena Zamora, who is also part of our Unidos EDG board, will be there to answer any questions you may have. Meg, I can happily turn it over to you.
We could keep going if we need to. Meg. Hmm.
So sorry, y'all. I had to get a dog moved out of the office while I was sitting in the background. She snores incredibly loudly, so very much apologies, but thank you so much for tagging me in. So this been a really, really great conversation. Is there anything that anybody didn't get a chance to touch on while we were going through questions? No? Okay. All right. Let's see here. There we go. All right. So let's see. Sorry, I'll try to make sure I've got my bearings here. All right, so for the last 7 minutes that we've got, we would love to take advantage of the extra time to kind of talk a little bit more with each of you. If there was anything that you didn't get a chance to share today, or something that, you know, we haven't really talked about, you know, when it comes to this subject, is there anything that, like I said, that we haven't gotten a chance to touch on, that we, you know, things that you think are important to talk about with this discussion that we haven't really gotten a chance to mention? Daniela, you're nodding along a little bit, so I'm guessing you probably have something to share.
No, I think we covered a lot of the points that are unique to our experiences as immigrants, but especially Latinos or foreign-born or American-born Latinos. So I don't think I have anything else. I think all of our journeys are extremely unique. Every one of us will go through different circles, different places. We'll have different reactions. And part of that, I think, is the beauty of our experience. Having moments like these where I get to hear from my peers how their experience was, where we might have things in common and where things might be different, to me is invaluable, because we tend to get so focused on work sometimes, and it's just easy to really get to know the people that you work with. And I'm just really glad I got to do this and learn more about the folks I work with almost every week.
Absolutely. We love to hear it.
I can share, you know, I want to mention that, well, one, we're coming off of the end of Hispanic Heritage Month, which has been incredible here at ServiceNow, thanks to this team right here in planning all these great events for professional development and giving back to the community. So I wanted to recognize the fact that over $10,000 was raised for Cristo Rey Foundation. And this team right here is not just great at creating and building and strengthening our Latino community, especially during Heritage Month, but also giving back, which we've talked about a bit in this session. So props to all of you as leaders for really having a successful Heritage Month, and hopefully things that, you know, don't just end there, especially for organizations that also celebrate Heritage Month, is that we make sure we continue to advocate for each other and give back to the community throughout the whole year, not just during the month of Heritage. So wanted to make sure I brought that up for everyone here.
Absolutely. And kudos to our moderator, Anna Lee. So she didn't get an opportunity to really tell her experience, which I've had the pleasure of meeting and knowing Anna Lee these last couple months, being on the leadership team at Unidos, and she's been an absolute rock star Unidos, and she doesn't get enough credit because the credit is definitely due there. And she's organized a ton of events for our members to be able to thrive, to educate our allies. So on behalf of the rest of us here, Annalie, thank you.
Absolutely. I second every single one of those words. You're amazing, Annalie. Thanks for everything you do.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure working with all of you, and it's a team effort. I'm honored to be a part of the Unidos CVG at ServiceNow.
Heck yes. Thank you, Annalie. Honestly, I can't tell you how in awe of this panel I've been, because y'all, you all come from the same org, but you don't necessarily all work together like, every day. So I think it is really awesome that we get to see these moments where, y'all are here representing the ServiceNow team, but, that doesn't necessarily mean that you all even know each other or have met or have worked together. So I think that that's really awesome that we were able to pull so many people from the ServiceNow team to really help illustrate that when we're talking, it doesn't matter what group we're talking about, right? There's no group is a monolith, but especially when it comes to the immigrant experience, there's so many different ways to go through it. And I feel like in a lot of ways, immigrants get lumped together as a group in a way that a lot of generally white Americans don't really understand and can't parse through, or refuse to. So I really, really appreciate each of you sharing your stories, because I think it really does help to educate a lot of us who need to do better and really need to understand the kind of people that we want to help out with. We need to understand that just because you have a passion to help immigrants does not mean your efforts are going to look the same person to person or group to group. So I think that's really, really awesome to share. Thank you so much to each of you. Annalie, before we do end, I did want to give you a chance if you'd like. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with our audience members, especially since you were, in a moderation position and not really getting a chance to speak on the panel? Is there anything that you wanted to make sure that we shared with the audience today?
I think ultimately I just want to open up any form of communication to all of you listening in. I'm here. I will support each and every one of you. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. My focus and my why and my purpose in being in tech is to help pave the way for everyone who wants to join into tech. So please use me as your resource, and I look forward to meeting anyone who reaches out.
Heck yes. Thank you. Thank you, Annalie, for offering that. That is awesome. We really love to see that connection happening. What should anybody else, what should people know if something that they've heard today sparked interest about ServiceNow? I can tell them all about your company page and stuff, but what should they know? Should they start checking out roles? Is there anything else that you want people to know about ServiceNow?
Please check out our .com page, servicenow.com. We have a lot of our roles up there, but also, like I mentioned earlier, the virtual job fair will be tomorrow, 3 to 4 p.m. EST. Please join. That's where we can answer your questions quickly. And like I mentioned, just reach out to anyone here.